Hi, and welcome to English-Fabule. Are you learning English? Great. Let's learn English with a very interesting story. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment. Let's get started.
It was late 2025, and a major legal problem was getting serious. Costco, one of America's largest retail companies, decided to take a bold step. They filed a lawsuit against the United States government. This was a big challenge to President Donald Trump and his administration. The main reason for this lawsuit was a dispute over money, specifically many billions of dollars. This money came from new taxes, called tariffs, placed on imported goods. Costco, a company with huge earnings each year, brought its case to a special court, the U.S. Court of International Trade. This court handles important trade disagreements. The situation was very urgent, and the financial stakes were enormous, causing much worry in the business world. Everyone involved knew that if Costco won, they could get billions of dollars back. But there was a critical hidden issue. Even a victory at the country's highest court, the Supreme Court, might not help Costco. A very strict deadline was coming soon. If this date passed without the right steps, Costco could lose its chance to get any money back, even if the tariffs were later found to be unlawful. This made many people wonder, what pushed a company famous for its popular and cheap hot dogs to challenge the most powerful office in the world? The answer was not only about finances. It was a race against a fast approaching time limit. More importantly, it was a fundamental fight over the limits of presidential power in the United States. 2. New rules for trade. The story now goes back to early 2025, before the big lawsuit. At this time, President Donald Trump started to change how America traded with the world. He used a law called the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, or IEEPA. This law was made in 1977. For almost 50 years, it was mostly used to stop money from going to unfriendly countries or criminal groups, not for broad trade taxes. However, President Trump used IEPA to put many new taxes, called tariffs, on goods coming into the United States. First, on February 1, 2025, he placed tariffs on imports from China, Canada, and Mexico. He said these taxes were because these countries failed to stop illegal fentanyl and illegal immigration. China faced a very high tax of 145%, while Canada and Mexico faced a 25% tax on some goods. Then, on April 2, 2025, President Trump said it was Liberation Day. He declared another national emergency. This time, he said the problem was dangerous trade imbalances and a lack of fair trade with other countries. He also mentioned threats to American factories and national security. Using IEPA again, President Trump put a basic 10% tariff on almost all goods coming from nearly every trading partner. Some countries, like India and Brazil, faced even higher reciprocal tariffs, sometimes as much as 50%. His government said that America, buying more from other countries than it sold, called a trade deficit, was a serious threat to the nation's economy and safety. This meant the IEPA law was being used in a new, controversial way. Many legal experts were surprised because the law was made for something entirely different. By late October 2025, the government had collected about $205 billion from these new tariffs. This was like a new tax on everyday items. With billions of dollars in new taxes suddenly levied on everyday goods, the stage was set for a fight. But the first shots wouldn't be fired by a retail giant, but by smaller players who had everything to lose. 3. Going to court. After President Donald Trump announced the new tariffs, legal challenges started quickly. Small businesses were the first to sue. They were hit first by the new costs, which made it hard for them to do business. State attorneys general also filed lawsuits. These state leaders believed the president was taking too much power for himself, acting against the Constitution. Groups like the American Civil Liberties Union also joined the fight, raising legal points about the nation's laws. Then came a big moment in May 2025. The U.S. Court of International Trade made an important decision. This special federal court, designed to handle disagreements about global trade rules, gave its unanimous decision. A group of 3 judges looked at the case. They all agreed, saying that President Donald Trump had used his power too much under the emergency law, IEEP. The judges explained their decision clearly. They stated that the Constitution gives only Congress the power to collect taxes and tariffs. A president cannot do this alone. This principle, known as the separation of powers, is a core idea in American law. It ensures that only Congress, which represents the people, can make new taxes and duties. The judges concluded that IEPA, the law the president used, was not meant to allow such wide-ranging tariffs. It was for different kinds of emergencies, not for changing trade policy in such a big way. The court decided that the tariffs put in place were against the law. This ruling was a stunning blow to President Trump's administration, making clear that his actions had gone too far. It marked a significant, though early, victory for the many businesses and states challenging the tariffs. But this victory did not last long. The government quickly appealed the decision. They sent the case to a higher court, the Federal Circuit Court of Appeals. In August 2025, this appeals court also ruled against the administration. 7 judges agreed that IEPA did not allow such large tariffs, upholding the lower court's finding. However, the appeals court allowed the tariffs to stay in place while the government decided its next step. The administration then asked the highest court in the country, the Supreme Court, to hear the case. This meant the legal fight was now headed for a final decision by the Supreme Court, setting up a major legal clash. 4. The big decision. The highest court in the country was next. On November 5, 2025, the U.S. Supreme Court heard very important arguments. For 3 hours, lawyers spoke about President Trump's tariffs. The main question was, did a law called IEEPA really give the president power to create new taxes on goods? Many judges on the court seemed unsure about the government's argument. Both conservative and liberal judges asked tough questions. They pressed the government's lawyer, the Solicitor General, to explain the president's actions. Justices like Samuel Alito, Amy Coney Barrett, Brett Kavanaugh, and Chief Justice John Roberts all showed concerns. They questioned how much power the president could take under IEE pay. The lawyer for the businesses, Neil Katyal, made a strong point to the justices. He clearly stated, "Tariffs are taxes. The people who wrote our Constitution gave that power only to Congress." This idea is very old and important. It is written in Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution. If the court agreed that the president could impose tariffs alone, it would greatly change this balance of power between Congress and the president. The judges also thought about a special legal idea called the Major Questions Doctrine. This rule means that if Congress wants the president to have very big economic or political power, Congress must say it very, very clearly. These tariffs were a huge deal. They would affect trillions of dollars in trade. Because the IEPA law did not clearly mention tariffs or new taxes, its language was a big problem for the president's lawyers. Everyone in the courtroom felt the tension of these arguments, knowing billions of dollars were at stake. As November continued, the nation waited for the Supreme Court's important decision. This decision would affect the future of many companies and the cost of goods. But for big companies like Costco, there was a hidden problem. A different, very important legal deadline was ticking down. This deadline could make the Supreme Court's final decision completely unhelpful for them. 5. A big deadline. The nation waited for the Supreme Court's important decision. But for many companies, including Costco, another very serious deadline was coming fast. This deadline was about how money paid for tariffs could be returned. When products come into the United States, Customs and Border Protection, or CBP, records them. These records are in a temporary state called unliquidated entry. This means the final taxes, called duties or tariffs, have not yet been officially set. After about 314 days, CBP liquidates the entry. This is when CBP officially calculates all the final duties a company must pay for those specific goods. For many products that arrived in February 2025, when President Donald Trump's new tariffs began, the liquidation date was around December 15, 2025. This date was very important for companies. Once CBP liquidated an entry, companies had only 180 days after that to formally challenge the tariffs. This challenge is called a protest. If a company did not file this protest in time, usually within 180 days, then the tariff payment became final. This was a legal trap. It meant that even if the Supreme Court later ruled that the tariffs were illegal, the company could not get its money back. This rule had been used before. In 1998, when a tax was found illegal, only companies that filed claims on time received refunds. Costco's lawyers understood this big risk. The Supreme Court's decision on the tariffs might not happen before December 15. If the decision came later, Costco could lose its chance to get back billions of dollars in tariffs. To avoid this, Costco asked CBP to delay the December 15 liquidation date, but CBP said no. This forced Costco to take action. On November 28, 2025, Costco filed its own lawsuit in the U.S. Court of International Trade. The company asked the court to declare President Donald Trump's tariffs unlawful. It also asked for a full refund of all the tariffs it had paid. This lawsuit was a crucial step for Costco to make sure it could get its money back no matter when the Supreme Court ruled. Costco was not alone in this race against time. Many other large companies faced the same situation. Since late October 2025, many other well-known brands began filing their own lawsuits. They also wanted to protect their right to get a refund. This rush of lawsuits showed that a widespread corporate worry was growing fast as the crucial deadlines approached. 6. Many companies sue. Costco was not the only company facing this urgent problem. In late 2025, a growing wave of lawsuits hit the U.S. Court of International Trade. Many other big names from different parts of the economy filed similar cases. These included Revlon, a famous makeup company, and Bumblebee Foods, known for canned seafood. Kawasaki Motors, making motorcycles and other products, also sued. Yokohama Tire, a major tire maker, pursued refunds. Even EssilorLuxottica, which owns Ray-Ban glasses, took legal action. Other companies like Berlin Packaging, Innovative Eyewear, iFit, Alcoa, and Ferguson Enterprises joined this growing challenge to President Donald Trump's tariffs. Many Japanese firms also filed their own coordinated cases, including subsidiaries of Yokohama Rubber, Ushio, NGK Insulators, Yamazaki Mazak, and Proterial. This wide range of companies showed that the tariffs affected nearly every industry and every corner of the American economy. It was not just one type of business suffering. Dozens of companies rushed to file their cases. They all had to act quickly before their goods' specific legal deadlines passed, especially around December 15, 2025. This rush created a sense of a stampede, with businesses fearing they would lose their chance for refunds forever. This huge number of lawsuits caused a big logistical nightmare for the courts and for the government. There were so many cases that handling them all was a massive task. Legal experts said that refunding billions of dollars in tariffs to hundreds or even thousands of companies would be a challenge unlike any seen before. The system was not ready for such a large-scale operation. While these corporate giants fought for billions of dollars in the courtroom, millions of American families were already paying the price for this trade war, whether they knew it or not. The real cost was not measured only in legal fees or company profits. It was in the higher prices on store shelves for everyday goods, impacting household budgets across the nation. 7. What it costs you. Many large companies were fighting the Trump administration's tariffs in court. But this legal battle was not just for big businesses or special legal rules. The tariffs also had a real impact on everyday American families. They changed the prices people paid for many goods in stores, often without them knowing why. Studies from places like Yale's Budget Lab showed what these tariffs truly cost. For example, all the new tariffs imposed by President Trump in 2025 made prices higher by about 2.3% in the short term. This meant that the average American household lost around $3,800 in buying power. This was a direct hit to family budgets, making it harder to afford daily needs like food and rent. Some products saw even bigger price increases. Clothes became much more expensive, with prices going up by about 64% at first. Shoes also cost more, around 39% higher. Even in the long run, these prices stayed high. This meant families had less money to spend on other important things, causing real financial stress. The tariffs hurt lower-income families the most. These families, with less money to begin with, found the extra costs a bigger problem. Experts found that about 95% of the tariff costs were paid by American buyers and consumers, not by the countries that sold the goods. This meant American families paid more for things they bought every day. Beyond higher prices, the tariffs also affected the wider economy and jobs. The U.S. economy grew slower, with gross domestic product, or GDP, declining. This slowdown led to a loss of about 740,000 jobs across the country. These numbers showed that the tariffs were not just about money collected by the government. They changed how much things cost, how many jobs there were, and how much money families had in their pockets. The economic pain caused by these tariffs was clear to see. For millions of families, it meant making harder choices at the grocery store or delaying important purchases. But the lawsuits against the tariffs were about something even bigger than money or jobs. They were about the fundamental rules of power in America. These cases asked a deep question about the Constitution, a question that went back to when the nation first began. Who truly holds the power to tax its people and control trade policies in such a broad way? 8. What happens next? The case before the Supreme Court was very important. It would decide how much power a president has. The main question was if President Donald Trump could use an emergency law called IEPA to put tariffs, taxes, on goods from other countries. Many people believed only Congress, not the president, could set taxes. This was a central rule of American government, known as the separation of powers. There were two main ways the Supreme Court could decide. If the court said President Trump could not use IEPA for tariffs, many things would happen. First, the tariffs would be illegal. Then, the government would have to give back billions of dollars it had collected from companies. This would be a huge task for U.S. Customs and Border Protection. They would face an unprecedented challenge, needing to process thousands of claims from companies like Costco. It would be hard to figure out how much money each company should get back, as each had different import dates and tariff amounts. Congress might even need to make new laws to help with this very big refund process. But if the court said President Trump could use IEEPA for tariffs, it would mean something else. The tariffs would stay in place. Also, this decision would give future presidents a lot more power. They could use emergency laws to do many things without asking Congress. This would change the balance of power between the president and Congress in a fundamental way. It would give the president much more control over the country's trade and economy, setting a powerful precedent for how executive authority could be used. This case showed how the American government works, which is not always simple or quick. A president can declare an emergency and put on tariffs. Companies and people then start to pay billions in new costs. But the courts might take a long time to decide if that first action was even legal. By the time the courts give their judgment, millions of transactions have happened, prices have been set, and the financial effects have already been felt across the country. Costco's lawsuit started because of a critical deadline. They needed to make sure they could get their money back if the tariffs were ruled illegal later. But their case, and dozens of others like it, became about something much bigger. It became a key moment for an important talk about how much power the president should really have. It raised profound questions about the limits of presidential authority in a country built on shared powers. In a situation like this, do you think a president should have the power to act quickly with tariffs in what they see as a national emergency? Or should that power always remain with Congress, even if it's slower?
Hey there! Just a second before you go. If you learned something new today, please give this video a like, write your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to the channel. It only takes a second, and it really, really helps to create even better English videos for you. Your support means the world,